There was a time in Israel's history when it felt like all hope was gone. Darkness didn't just cover the land, it infected the hearts of God's people. They had turned away from Him, doing what was right in their own eyes. And as a result, they fell into the hands of a cruel enemy, the Midianites. For 7 long years, Israel was crushed. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and others swept in like a plague, stealing crops, destroying livestock, leaving nothing behind. God's people were driven out of their homes and into caves. They were hiding, starving, and afraid. The once proud nation was now a broken people, scattered and silenced by fear. But in that despair, they cried out. And as He always does, God listened. And what did He do? Did He send a champion, a warrior, a general? No, He picked a man named Gideon, a man who was doing the best he could just to survive, threshing wheat in a winepress, hidden from view, hoping to go unnoticed by the enemy. He was not strong. He was not confident. He didn't see himself as anyone special. But heaven had already decided, this is the man. Then came the words that would change everything. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Mighty warrior? Gideon probably looked over his shoulder to see who the angel was talking to. He didn't feel mighty. He didn't feel brave. He didn't feel like someone God would use. In fact, he said so himself. My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Translation: you've got the wrong guy. But hear this, God wasn't looking at Gideon's weakness. He was calling out His purpose. And that's exactly what God is doing with you. You may feel tired, you may feel stuck. Maybe you're looking around at your life wondering, where is God? Why is everything so hard? Why do I feel so overwhelmed, so under-equipped? But in the middle of all that, God is speaking to you, not with condemnation, not with shame, but with identity. You are a mighty warrior. God didn't tell Gideon to go find strength. He said, go in the strength you have. In other words, start where you are. Use what you've got. I'll handle the rest. Men, listen. God is not waiting for you to be fearless. He's not waiting for you to get everything together. He's not looking for your perfection. He's looking for your yes. Gideon said yes, but not without fear. When God told him to tear down the idols in his father's house, Gideon obeyed. But he did it at night because he was still scared. And yet God honored his obedience, not his fear. That's how God works. He'll meet you in your hesitation, but He won't leave you there. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and soon he had an army of 32,000 men. But God said, too many. Why? Because if the victory looked like man's doing, Israel would take the credit. So God reduced the army to 10,000. Still too many, and finally, down to 300. From 32,000 to 300. That's God's math. Because when God is in it, you don't need numbers. You need faith. Even then, God knew Gideon still had fear. So He said, if you're afraid, go down to the camp and listen. And Gideon did. He crept down and overheard 2 enemy soldiers talking about a dream. A loaf of barley bread knocking over a Midianite tent. The other soldier said, this is nothing other than the sword of Gideon. God has given Midian into his hands. That was all Gideon needed. His faith was ignited. He went back to his men, not with a sword in his hand, but with a word in his heart. And with 300 warriors carrying torches, clay jars, and trumpets, they surrounded the enemy camp. At Gideon's signal, they broke their jars, raised their torches, blew their trumpets, and shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Confusion erupted. The enemy turned on each other. Panic spread. The battle was won, not by strength, but by obedience. Not by numbers, but by faith. Not by might, but by the Spirit of the Lord. Men, let's get real. Gideon's story isn't just a nice Bible tale. It's a battle cry for every man who's ever felt unqualified, overlooked, or stuck in fear. Gideon was hiding, doubting himself, convinced he had nothing to offer, and yet God looked at him and said, you are a mighty warrior. This is what God is saying to you. You might feel worn out, weighed down, or like you're just trying to survive. But God sees more. He sees the warrior, the leader, the man of strength and purpose that He created. Not someday, right now. Even with your flaws, your past, your struggles, you are called. This world doesn't need more passive men. It needs men who will rise up in faith, stand firm in truth, and fight for their families, their faith, and their future. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to trust the God who's already chosen you. So brothers, stand up, step out, fight back against the lies that say you're not enough. God says you are, and His voice is the only one that matters. Be strong, be courageous, be the man God sees when He looks at you, not the one the world tries to define. You are more than enough, not because of your power, but because of His presence in you. This is your moment, this is your fight, and you are not alone.